Here we are in the great outdoors. Hello, again. Yes, hi.
So, what exactly is deforestation?
Deforestation is when forests, or not even forests, when trees are cut down.
Alright, so what does deforestation have that damages the ecosystem?
Well, first off, cutting down trees may be like cutting down entire homes for species. For example, it's like supposing a bird lives in a tree and a monkey lives in that tree. And maybe that tree is a fruit-bearing tree for other creatures. Now, you come along and you chop down that tree. Now, the monkey has no home, the bird has no home, and now there's no food for anyone.
Alright, so does it contribute in the carbon cycle?
Why, yes, actually, cutting down trees does contribute to the carbon cycle. The more trees are cut down, the less carbon is absorbed. But mind you, there isn't enough of an effect you start to see until it's actual deforestation by human standards. If you chop down a tree or two, you're not going to see much of a dip in the carbon absorption. But as we humans do, if you cut out an entire forest, then there's going to be a lot less carbon that is absorbed and a lot more that stays out in the atmosphere.
Alright, so what is the carbon cycle exactly?
The carbon cycle is the path that carbon travels throughout its time on Earth. For example, carbon could start out in a volcano, and then when the volcano erupts, all the pressurized gases in it, along with carbon, are released. Now, the carbon is now in the atmosphere. It can stay there, stay there, or it can be absorbed by the plants. If it's absorbed by the plants use it to make carbohydrates, which is like the plant's food. Oh, and the plants also release oxygen, which is good for the creatures around it. Now, if multiple trees are cut down, that means more, like I said, more carbon is going to stay out in the atmosphere and block more of the sun's energy and keep it here on Earth, which will in turn warm it up.
So what exactly is carbon cycle having to do with global warming?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The way that the carbon cycle contributes to global warming is because the carbon cycle is essentially the path that carbon travels throughout its stay on Earth. And supposing carbon is released from a volcano during an eruption, that carbon then goes into the atmosphere and stays there until it's either absorbed by the tree or forms into permafrost on some mountain peak. Then, if it's not absorbed by the tree, it's going to just stay out in the atmosphere. And the more carbon isn't absorbed, the more of it stays up there and warms up our planet. Now you'd think that, it would go to permafrost. But no, permafrost forms slowly, very slowly. So the carbon has time to warm the Earth up by keeping in the sun energy, well, heat energy. Because this warms our Earth up, it's also going to melt some of the permafrost that already exists, releasing more carbon, as well as melt the ice that is here on Earth, contributing to the rise of sea levels and submerging cities and land masses underwater. Another rebound is on a much smaller scale, but still very, very dire, in the creeks. If the water temperature of our creeks or rivers is raised by even a few degrees, it's going to kill off many, many, many of the intolerant creatures that live in the water.
Alright, so what is the greenhouse effect?
The greenhouse effect is the actual process of the carbon going up and trapping in the sunlight, like a greenhouse. A greenhouse is made of glass and it traps the heat in so that the plants staying in there can be warm throughout the year, even in cold periods of time. That is exactly what is happening. The carbon going up into the atmosphere, forming, so to speak, a blanket, and trapping in the heat energy.
Alright, so what is the difference between greenhouse gases and greenhouse effect?
Greenhouse gases are the actual gases that contribute to the greenhouse effect, like methane, carbon, etc. Well, carbon dioxide, and etc.
Alright, so what's the difference between greenhouse effect and global warming?
Global warming is the actual warming of our planet. The greenhouse effect is what, so to speak, creates the global warming. While the warming would have happened anyway, it is happening on at a much faster rate now that there is more carbon in the atmosphere.
So, isn't global warming something that's seasonal? Isn't carbon dioxide emission sort of vary through seasons?
Not entirely. While carbon emissions are lessened when the northern hemisphere is turned towards our sun.
Why is that?
Well, it's because the northern hemisphere has most of the world's vegetation on it, like the giant forest belt, is the largest contributor to taking away the carbon in our atmosphere. When that belt is turned towards the sun in the summer, when the trees, they do their absorption thing, it takes away a very large part of the Earth's carbon. But when it's turned away, and the southern hemisphere is turned towards the sun, more of the carbon stays up in the atmosphere because the southern hemisphere does not have nearly as many trees as the northern. So in a way, the carbon in our atmosphere is affected by the seasons, but emissions are not a seasonal thing.
So you're saying that we humans are actually breaking the chain of its regular fluctuations?
Yes, that is exactly what I am saying. Ever since the industrial revolution, many, I cannot stress that word enough, greenhouse gases have been put out into the atmosphere. Many more than there were before.
Alright, thank you for your time, Nick.
You're welcome.
And hope to see you next video.
Goodbye.